Hello all, welcome to the EcoTeq Academy webinar, Authentic Sustainability in a Greenwashed World. Today we have Nicola Flores joining us from Italy. Nicola has had a couple of decades now of experience in the cleaning and maintenance industry and is now CCO with Fimap. It's one of Europe's leading cleaning equipment manufacturers. We will be answering any questions at the end of this webinar, so feel free to please post in the chat if you have any questions throughout the webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and special thank you to Nicola. It's 6:30 over there in the middle of your summer holidays, Nicola. Did you want to explain a little bit more on your on Fimap before we go on?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon for you. Good morning for me. Yes. Fimap is, as you said, an Italian manufacturer. We create all the machines that are necessary to clean floors, hard floors, sweepers, scrubbers, vacuum cleaners, and single disc machines. We have branches, well, in Italy is the headquarters in Verona, Romeo and Juliet City, and then we have headquarters around the world in branches in France, in Spain, in India, and China. The main production, of course, is in Italy. This is just a picture of our headquarters and the logistics center. The thing that is important about us is that we sell in 80 countries in the world, so we try to have the wider possible approach when we focus on our products and everything that is related to our products and our company, like certifications. And this is, to us, is really important because we have to compete in a really worldwide market. Just to give you some examples about certification, since the theme, the main topic of today is sustainability. When we talk about environmental certifications like CFP and CFO, that we have both for products and organization, we are, let's say, in a difficult situation because Europe decided to become the most, let's say, sustainable continent. With the program to 2035, they want to reduce 55% of all the emissions, and in 2050 they want to have net zero process all over Europe. So that is really a hard challenge for everybody, especially in a worldwide market where we have to compete with China or India or other countries in which they don't have these strict regulations. That's why we created the commercial office, that I'm the chief of the commercial office, together with the sustainability office. So we have a green lab office with environmental engineers that follow all the commercial aspects in order to create for tenders specific calculation and certifications for public and private tenders to demonstrate what is the real impact of our products. But that is enough about Fimap.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's interesting. So just a bit more on the actual certification side of things. You explained before this, it goes through the whole life cycle assessment of the products and the organization. Is that have I got that right?
Yeah, that is exactly it. The main topic about sustainability is that how you measure it and what you take into consideration when you do measure it. And so that is really the toughest part of the job. So when you want to talk in general, this is valid all over the world for every product or every organization all over the world. You need to have rules. You need laws or standards to regulate how you make this calculation, because in order to reduce your impact or neutralize it or offsetting it, you need to take into consideration for a machine, for example, everything from when you start, you have the idea, so the eco-design part, when you use the computer to design it, and then you calculate every screw, every bolt, every nut that goes inside the machine, every single part, up to when all the parts are supplied over the world and they reach Fimap, and then when you create it, you assemble the machine, and so the energy you consume, the heater, the air conditioning, and all the things, the tools that you need during the assembly process, and then of course the downstream part. So the first one is upstream, then there is the core one, the production part, and then there is the downstream. So when you use a machine, this is true also for a car. This is true for every type of product. They all have an upstream, core, and downstream process. It's a little bit technical, but the idea is every screw in a machine or in a car or in an elevator or whatever it is, you have to understand when you design it, where this screw will end at the end of the life. So when you waste it away or you have to dispose of it.
That's interesting. So, and when we're talking about the obviously the eco design, we're including things like how far is these parts being transported across the world, and the emissions out of the freight side of things to actually get it to your factory to actually build the machinery. Is that does it go down to that sort of level?
That is exactly like that. So you take the bill of materials and you have to know every single part, where is this produced, what is the impact. Of course, there are international database that are recognized by international universities, and you have to apply specific rules, and these rules are they're called PCR, so product category rules, and they change specifically for every type of product. So exactly like you said.
That's cool. And you went through the social accountability standard with us before. Do you want to give us a quick update on what this is? I'm not sure if we've got exactly the same. Obviously, it's an international standard, but I'm not sure how much we actually know about it here in Australia. Where, as you said before, the rest of the world's a little bit behind Europe in this side of things.
Yes. So just to give you an example, absolutely. When Europe decided that all public tenders must have 50% of all the procurement, so everything that is supplied to public offices in Europe should be 50% must have environmental certificates. And for sustainability certificates, this is also the social part, not only the environmental part, but also the social part. Italy decided to bring it up to 100%. So whenever you make a tender, a public tender in Italy, you have what they are called the minimum environmental criteria. So you have to abide to these norms, and you need SA 8000, so the social accountability certification. There is an organizational, you know it very well in Australia, but it is mandatory to have this said. All the supply chain is anti-discrimination, so no child work, of course, and free of the unions to meet together for the workers to decide and participate in the working life and everything. And so this is one, and the other one is the carbon footprint. So in Italy, for example, right now, if you want to participate in a tender, you must have both the social part and the environmental part for every product
Yeah,
you
it's
want in a
interesting.
cleaning sector. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And the next slide we ran through, which I found very interesting, quite enlightening actually. The same machine you're saying in different applications can have a different CO2, even if it is an electric machine and theoretically no tailpipe emissions. Can you explain this for us?
Absolutely. This is, I believe, one of the most important thing in order to avoid greenwashing. So when you have a certification, the thing is that you are looking for a number so you can measure it, so you can reduce it and compensate it. So that's pretty much the idea. But every machine, every car, or every forklift, they consume resources like energy, or in our case, also water, based on used. So you need, for example, make what's called a systematic approach. So a calculation model that can allow you to understand that the same machine will produce different CO2 based on how it will be used. This is the same as a car. If you drive on a highway or if you drive in the city center with the traffic, the consumption of CO2, the production of CO2, it will change, whether it is an ICE engine or an electric engine. Okay, this will change because you're using the machine in a different way. So just one number or giving a number without a certification makes really no sense. It's really greenwashing. So in order to avoid greenwashing, it is important to have a certified method, on how you calculate the consumption.
That's interesting. So, although we are saying, we are still producing 495 grams per hour or 399 grams per hour in a machine like this that's electric. Have you done comparisons like between this and then an ICE machine, or that's something that you haven't really gone down that path? You're obviously mostly focused on bringing your own emissions down.
Yes, absolutely. So, just to follow up with the example that I gave before, in Italy now it's not allowed to use any ICE engine scrubber dryers or sweepers in every public tenders. So only battery operated, only
Sure.
electrical vehicle. Okay, but besides that, we do have some, for example, sweepers that still have ICE because in some parts of the world, like sometimes also Australia, you need ICE engines. So we do produce them, and of course the problem is the efficiency of the engine. So we know that ICE engine always need, let's say, the efficiency is up to 10% because 90% of what they produce is just warm, it's just heat. It's just heat.
Yep.
Yeah, in the electric motors, the efficiency can go up to 91, 92, 93%. Of course, depends on the motor. So, it's just only 7% the heat or the waste of energy that you have. So that is really the biggest difference. Then, of course, it changes how you produce the electricity. So if you produce the electricity to charge the batteries in a greener way, it's even better, of course. But every state, every nation in the world, there is an international list on how is the energy consumption, the CO2 consumption for every kilowatts that is produced in the country.
Sure. So with these numbers here, would you have gone as far as looking at Australia's average? Because we still produce a lot with coal. There's obviously some more sustainable energy on the way, but we do produce a lot with, it is good quality coal. But are these numbers, would you go as far as looking at where the machines are going to produce these numbers?
We can absolutely do that. That's why I said that we have an office with environmental engineers that can create. Let's say that you want to clean a hall, a city hall, okay, a commune or whatever you call it in Australia. I don't know, city hall, okay,
Yep.
in Melbourne.
Yep.
Perfect. So we can make the calculation based on how many square meters or feet you need to clean, and where the machine is going to clean. And of course, we can also analyze the type, if it's an industry, it's a retail, if it's a supermarket, if it's a gym. We can calculate the provision of what will be the environmental impact of that machine, not only for the machine, but also the electricity, the water, the chemicals, and everything that the machine will use, the spare parts that the machine will use in the next 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, sure.
So yes, absolutely.
That's very interesting. Cool. Just bouncing on. So you wanted to run through the life cycle analysis a little bit in a bit more detail.
Okay.
Should be okay.
So this is the main example because the walk behind 50 centimeter is the most sold machine in the world. And we analyze what is the impact of upstream, core, and downstream. Just as a reminder, upstream is the, let's say, designing phase. The core is the production and assembly phase. And the downstream is when the machine is being used until the end of life. Okay, so as you can see, the machine, the biggest impact is in the downstream part. So when it's being used in cleaning the city hall or, the mayor office or whatever. Okay, but we wanted to work on the 3 levels, so upstream, core, and downstream. So in the upstream part, we need to work on what are the resources that we use when we produce the machine, when we design the machine, like using recycled plastics, for example. In the second part, in the core part, we need to work on the factory. So in Fimap, so that's why we have the carbon footprint of organization. And in the downstream, we need to work on what the machine does when it's working in a real life environment, so in a working site. So that's exactly what we try to do. That's why if you want to reduce anything, you need to measure it, and you need to measure it according to a standard. That's why we have the carbon footprint of product.
That's interesting. So you're saying even with an electric piece of machinery, still 60%, 66% of the emissions is in the downstream which is
Absolutely.
post-delivery, essentially.
Absolutely. Yes. And this is true for a lot of machine, cars, forklifts, because of course their lifespan, imagine that scrubber dryer, the lifespan of a scrubber dryer goes from 7 to 10 years. So that's what you can expect on a lifespan. So of course the production takes maybe 2 weeks, and so then
Yep.
the design maybe takes 6 months. So it will live longer than the other part. But then every day a scrubber dryer will use resources, water and chemical, for example, and energy every day.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Okay. That's interesting. You did touch on the recycled plastics side of things before. So we'll
Yeah.
bounce onto that now, if that's all right.
There is another important thing regarding greenwashing. For example, if you want to say that my machine has recycled plastic, as you know, an advice for every public officer, you should always require a certification for that. Otherwise, it's just something that you can say, but it's not true as long as there is an independent third party that verifies what you said. In our case, for example, in our industry, so in our sector, there were no material strong enough to create the tanks. Tanks are the biggest part in our machines, and they are made of plastic, polyethylene. So we designed together with all the supply chain a specific material that takes all the old tanks and other parts, polyethylene parts, mixed together. We have to color them black, so because there are different colors, so we colored them black. We own this material, so it's owned by Fimap, and then we certified all the supply chain. So for the second waste byproduct until the supply chain, the molder that prints out the tanks, and then the tanks arrive in Fimap, and the tanks are mounted on the machine, and the machine is sent to Australia, for example. So everything is certified according to a standard. There is Remade in Italy, that is the name of the standard. We can go up to 30% of total recycled plastic on a machine, and 50% of the material is recycled, and everything is
Recyclable. Yeah.
certified.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. That's interesting. Just bouncing back on that, you did touch on it then about suppliers. So your suppliers, how do you go about making sure that your suppliers are also following sustainable practices then, even further upstream than, you as the equipment manufacturer?
There are two levels of audit. The first audit is we go there and we check with the supplier what is going on. And the second part is that an independent third party, looking for the standards of the remade in Italy, goes there and also comes to Fimap to check every year. So we have to do our internal audit and then an external audit with an independent third party that comes and check that everything is according to the regulation of the Remade in Italy standard, and then we have the certification.
Is this part of the reason why electric machines can be more expensive? Because there's so much certification and
Absolutely, absolutely. But let me tell you one thing about this because it's really interesting. In Italy, we have before this new law that came in 2019, so before COVID, when we had the public tenders with the cheapest product. So that was the only option. So you have to bid the lowest bid one. That was the idea. So you bought a machine, it was 10, the other was 7, and the one with 7 won. That's it. So the cheapest. When they changed this, everybody in the industry explained to the politicians that it's not possible to create a sustainable machine that is cheaper at the beginning. The sustainable machine will be cheaper in the lifespan. So let's take, for example, the €7 machine and the €10 machine, and the €10 will save you €4 during the lifespan. So at the end of the lifespan, that machine, the actual cost will be €4 less. So it will be cheaper, but not when you buy it, but in the lifespan because you will use resources every day. If you
yeah,
want
sure.
just to take an example for that, take a machine that uses 50% less energy or 50% less chemicals. So all the money that you save on chemicals actually are reducing the cost, the total cost of ownership. There is a life cycle assessment of the cost.
Yeah, sure. No, that's cool. And then bouncing on through for the actual eco design you had. Wanted to put this in there, obviously.
Yes, this is of course still in the upstream part. So when we design the machine, we want to use recycled materials, like the plastic one, so already recycled materials, or we want to use materials that can be recyclable. So at the end of life can be recyclable. This is why the end of life is deeply connected with the eco design part. So in the beginning of life, it's like a cradle to cradle approach. We have for every machine a recyclability index that tells you how much, what is the percentage that the machine can be recyclable at the end of the life. We go from 85 to 90% on pretty much every machine. Of course, it changes. There is no certification yet on this because there is no rule, no regulation on how to measure this and how to declare this. So at the moment, this is a self-declaration that we do based on our carbon footprint certification. But still, there
Sure.
is no international law for this.
Yeah, sure. The other question we do get a bit is with the sustainability of the batteries and the upstream side of that. What's your thoughts on obviously the lithium batteries is the biggest, where the most questions are. How do you sort of control that?
Yes. Well, in Italy and in Europe, we have a consortium that takes all the old batteries and they recycle them. Whether it's a lead battery or a lithium battery, of course, the lead battery, they have a longer life. Longer life, I mean, they are in the market. They've been in the market for many years. So there is a supply chain of recycle of the lead batteries that is easier. The lithium batteries are newer, so they are starting recycling lithium batteries, and there are these consortium. I know that in other states, in other part of the world, these consortiums of recycled batteries are not well organized yet, but for sure they will.
Yeah, we've got one here in Australia. It's not massive, but there's not a whole lot of batteries to recycle, so I can't imagine why they would build a huge plant when there's nothing to put through it yet. But obviously that'll grow as the demand grows. But thinking like
Absolutely.
back as far as like the mining of the materials to go into it. So obviously you use your LFP batteries, so your lithium ferrous phosphates that like your iron that goes into it. How do you sort of gauge the emissions on that side of things?
So, for example, one of the producers, you know that the supply chain of lithium, as you are one of the main producers in the world, it's pretty much goes through China. Okay, you know that.
So it gets mined, 55% of it gets mined in Australia and then sent to China.
Exactly.
Sure.
So then you don't have a lot of when it goes to China, they're not so focused on sustainability in this moment or in the past. But for example, one of our supplier, there is a European supplier that takes the cells from China, maybe with Australian lithium. They have carbon footprint of all their batteries, of the lithium batteries. So they know exactly the same analysis that we did, so the life cycle assessment. So the supplier with the carbon footprint certification, they know what are all the parts, the upstream, the core, and the downstream. So they cannot do anything about the Australian part or the Chinese part, but maybe they can do something where they produce them, so in Italy in this case, and so where they assemble the machine, the batteries, and what they can do in the end of life, so in the last part of the downstream of the batteries. So that's why this is so important to analyze all the life cycle assessment.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps us up then, Nicola. We were just going to open up. There's been a few questions that have come through on the chat. If you're right, I'll just read them out. One of them, this was obviously earlier on in the piece, just because it's electric doesn't mean it's zero emissions. I think we've covered off on
Absolutely.
that, but yeah, did you want to expand on that at all anymore?
Yeah, just that is exactly true. And it is really for example, a car, it's the same that they discuss like zero emission on a car. Actually, it's a little bit greenwashing because nothing in the world is zero emission. Everything that a human produces always has an impact, a CO2 impact on the environment.
I
So
guess
nothing
even
can be
if it has a
breathing.
driver and they're breathing, then you've got
Yeah,
emissions.
as long as you breathe, you're emitting CO2. So okay, fine. So this is the first thing. Of course, when they talk about zero emission, they talk only in that case, for example, on the downstream part. So
Yep.
the production of the car still has, or the designing of the car still has an impact. And then the zero emission can be only if you consider the charging of the battery, if that electricity is made with renewable energy. So it's really
So
greenwashing.
even then, when you're
Okay.
talking cars, you're still replacing tires, which uses emissions. So, but
Of
the
course.
reality is you're doing exactly the same with an ICE car. So all we're talking about is the actual just driving on the road. The tailpipe emissions, I'm assuming, is where they're saying zero emissions of the
Yeah.
running of the machine. But it's a good question. We've got another one come through from Phil. Who runs the recyclability index? Is it an internal or external scheme?
So as I said, right now, the recyclability index is internal. So we have our environmental engineers that they do this analysis because there is no international regulation. Every time there is a standard like a ISO 14067 for the carbon footprint of products or the ISO 14064 for the carbon footprint of organization, we want to follow the standard and declare everything as an independent third party. So somebody else outside Fimap comes and checks that what we say is true. In this case, there is no regulation yet, so it's a self-declaration at the moment, and it's the only way we can do this because the standard was released in 2018 and we did it in the 2019 because before that it was just self-declaration, and that is the problem. That's why you always, this is really an advice that I give to every public officers, always ask for certifications as long as they exist, of course.
That's cool. That's very good. And we've got one coming through from Jared. Is this the same for all manufacturers, or have we just picked the best? Well, we have picked a good manufacturer in picking Fimappa. But what's your response to that, Nicola? Is it fairly widespread across Europe and America? And what's your response on this?
Okay. So in Italy, we say never ask to the waiter if the wine is good. So of course I cannot say
That's true.
but these are international norms. What I wanted to do, and I agreed this with Brendan, is not to just say FIMAP is the best in the world because it's not true. Okay, we do what we can at the best that we could, but we're not the best in the world. But the idea is everything that I told you are international regulation with international standards that every company in the world, if they want, they can apply. So the ISO standard, like the quality 9001, is an international standard. Everybody can say, I want to apply for this. And everybody can do that. It's true that in our sector, so the cleaning sector, the scrubber dryer producer or sweeper producers, since not all of them are made in these countries, because many of them are made in China, even maybe if the headquarters is in another country, they are not so focused on sustainability. We started this journey in 2007, actually. So that's why we are really focused on this.
That's good. So we've found exactly the same thing, Nicola. Where if we're looking, obviously through Europe, especially, there's some countries in Europe that are very focused on it. There's probably 50% of the producers in North America are very focused on it as well. But if you are moving towards some of those other countries where it's more of a price-driven market than a sustainability-driven market, you do have, like you mentioned China, you do have these issues around the whole ESG, the sustainability and emissions side of things. So it is a good question, Jared. We have picked FIMAPA because they do have the standard, but it is fairly widespread, especially throughout the, I guess, Western Europe and North America. Ian's got a question come through. Zero tailpipe emissions is still a benefit to cleaning up, or this is more of a statement. Zero tailpipe emissions still a benefit to cleaning up the air in the city, given the high rates of asthma and deaths from tailpipe emissions. I do agree with you on that, Ian. There's actually some studies done in Australia by a gentleman by the name of Keith Loveridge on air quality. And the more you look into it, the more revealing it is as far as the damage it is causing humans with the air quality. But I think that pretty much wraps us up. I really appreciate everyone's time. Really appreciate your time, Nicola. We'll let you hit the slopes, I guess. Are you on some mountain resort, I'm assuming, in Italy at the
Yeah.
moment during your summer holidays? So we'll let you go, but really appreciate everyone. Keep an eye out for the next webinar. We'll be in a couple of months, and feel free to give us some feedback on the QR code on the screen. Get in touch if you do have any questions. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a nice day.